it.
She's a world traveler, has a family, and a professional photographer here in Fort Collins. Tonight she'll talk about documentary photography and the story behind how that documentary photography is created. Welcome, Jill.
We have a ton of amazing talent in here today, and I'm not here to tell you how to take pictures. What I'm going to talk about today is how you can elevate your photography with collaboration and bring it to another level. For true collaboration to happen, you need to have passion, the willingness to learn, and the ability to listen. A funny thing happened to me when I joined this club. I sat over there by the guy next to the projector, and he was very familiar to me. And the entire time of the meeting, I was trying to place, where do I know this guy from? I know this guy from somewhere. And for those of you that don't know, there's a category that we have in this club called I Wish I Shot That. And this gentleman started showing pictures of lightning and weather, and I knew right away I had photographed him. It was Walt. I remember going out. I remember going out to his property, somewhere out east, I believe. That's Walt. 1995. We were both a lot younger then. I came to Fort Collins in 1994 as a young photojournalist. This is me on the left. I loved those oversized photography vests for some reason. Luckily, I got out of that phase. Photography for me has always been a collaborative effort. As a photojournalist, I worked with writers, editors, and of course, subjects. It was important to be a part of a team to deal with some of the things that we saw as photojournalists. Maybe some of you old-timers in here remember the 1997 flood that swept through Fort Collins. At that time, we had a wonderful staff at the Coloradoan. It was a real paper. It wasn't just the 3 pages we have now. It was full of talented writers, photographers, and people that were interested in real news and taking the time to investigate it. And I was very lucky to be a part of that staff. Did you guys know Chuck Norris visited Fort Collins? 6 degrees of separation. He came here to film a pilot. I had the opportunity to photograph all kinds of assignments in the water, in the air, in high schools. What drives us to take pictures? What drives you to take pictures? Is it our glorious landscape here in Colorado? Ralph getting up at God knows what time to go out and photograph star trails? Is it beauty in humans? Is it the emotion of a family event? Whatever that reason is, we all are here as photographers to capture a moment. One of my most meaningful stories was one that I spent a year documenting. At the time, AIDS was becoming more prevalent in the heterosexual population. This was about 1995. I spent a year photographing Rosella Dawson and her family. The reporter and I were trying to figure out how could we make this story have impact. All across the country, stories like these were being published. But we wanted to know, what is the story beneath the story? And the idea was, how do you parent under pressured time? We all know parenting is a very, very difficult thing to do without the challenges that we face, as significant as having a very limited time. It was very difficult and emotional for me. I went there day after day and had to find the line to be neutral about what I was feeling. But at the same time, I recognized how privileged I was to be allowed in these people's home at their most vulnerable times in their life. I needed the collaboration of the reporters and the editors around me to help me deal with that and to keep me authentic to what the story was really about. The end was obvious, and I was privileged once again to be there during that time. What this made me realize about myself is that I wanted more. I wanted more of these opportunities to photograph life's milestones. And I had that opportunity once again at the Coloradoan, photographing bar mitzvahs and even births, which put me off having a kid for a very, very long time. I wanted to figure out how could I have more of these opportunities in my life where I could explore people's innermost emotions. And I also had a passion for travel. Has anyone in here had the National Geographic photographer bug? Wanted to navigate through the treacherous roads of some third world country in search of a unique opportunity to photograph some interesting, colorful tribe? Well, I always had that dream too. And the first place that I wanted to go, if I ever had that opportunity, was Africa. After some time researching, I found an organization that took photographers, and I was on pretty much the first plane out. It was difficult for me to leave the Coloradoan because I had made a lot of friends, and a lot of relationships. But at that same time, media was changing. The devices were changing. All of the images that you're seeing here were all shot on film. We were moving towards digital, really heavy digital cameras. It wasn't all sorted out. And there was a shift at that time, which we've come to see in a lot of ways today. I had the opportunity to go to Zimbabwe specifically, to work for a media organization that produces and distributes African films. I was able to work with African crews and work on films that were about Africans. And there happens to be one right back there, I'm gonna laser him, who, as a side note, I found and married. And that was my opportunity to explore Zimbabwe in a much more intimate level, so to speak. Before I left, I gathered donations and brought over about 50 disposable cameras. We're still talking film days. And I knew I wanted to teach kids photography. I didn't know how I was going to facilitate it, but it was something that I was passionate about. One of my responsibilities in the film company was to bring films to the townships, to the high-density areas, and show them films. When I went there, I was fascinated by the people there, and I wanted to learn more. I wanted to be able to photograph in these communities. But I also knew I couldn't go in dripping with my cameras, going in there saying, I'm here, I'm ready to take your picture, are you ready? It's dangerous for most foreigners, and particularly it can be for whites. I knew I had to find another way to collaborate. And I found a dance organization that we quickly became friends with and worked with them to form our little Kids with Camera workshop. Through them, I was able to meet the parents and talk to them about what I wanted to do. We had about 20 participants, and we started working with them on a weekly basis. The images that you're seeing here are all taken by the members of our little camera club, and they're all taken by kids under the age of 13. This particular image is, for those who can't see, is from an 8-year-old. Now what I want you to see here are the subjects that the kids are choosing. These are their everyday people that are around them. And the perspective of, it's a little hard on the screen here, but is at their level. These are two guards at the front of a shebeen or a bar where mostly men spend the day drinking, and these guards are there to just kind of make sure it all flows right. The township that I was in is called Mbari, and it's very informal in terms of business. This is a hair salon. And I don't know if you can see here, but she's getting her hair done. I'm not really sure if she's getting it straightened, curled, colored, but she's just sitting there getting her hair done. What I love about these images is that the kids are focusing in on the subject, but they're allowing the environment to give us more information about where we are. I didn't really talk to them too much about composition. And that's one of the things that I find so fascinating, how composition can be innate. And sometimes as adults, we can grow out of that and become too constricted by rules. This is the market in Mbari, and you can see no one notices this kid, right? He is invisible. The perspective of what's happening there goes on without anyone even noticing. The jugs here, these colorful jugs, are used for water, probably cooking oil, which Zimbabwe has very little of these days. Zimbabwe is a very changed place at the moment. But what's fascinating to me is that there's no fear from the photographer or the subjects. This is my favorite picture. I love this picture. There's no intimidation. He's happy to pose for the photographer. He's got a really authentic look in his face. When I saw this, I was inspired by it, and I wanted to know, how can I bring that into my work? What's important about collaboration is that you have the passion and the ability to learn and listen. As I traveled through Zimbabwe, I got to know many of the people around me, and I tried to make similar images that felt authentic to me. Everyone that I encountered was generous with their time, and I wanted to find a way to give back. One of the things that I would do was travel with a small printer, a small Canon selfie printer, prints 4x6 images. And as we were talking about the homeless shoot or the income shoot, low income shoot, it is amazing to me that people don't have pictures of their family. And they'll never have pictures of their family to pass down. To me, that's absolutely heartbreaking, that we would never have pictures of our ancestors and our kids would never have pictures of us. So my way to be able to give back to these people were to take pictures and make prints for them. What I quickly found out was that how people want to be seen and how I want to photograph them are two different things. Often, when I ask someone if they want to have their picture taken, they don't usually turn me down, but they run out to get their best outfit and maybe a prized possession. And they like to pose like this. Very stoic. Someone said to me, very 1800s, have very piercing eyes. But I didn't see that. I wanted this. And this is a great example of what I want and what they want. And as photographers, I would ask you, when you're taking a picture, who are you taking the picture for? What are you trying to capture? What do they want to be, how do they, want to be represented? These two women are domestics in a friend's home, and they always welcome us. When I went to go take these pictures, they had their ideas of what they wanted. And sitting in this chair, kind of back in the chair, wasn't exactly ideal for me. I had a great green, lush background, no problem. But I really had to work, try to come up with a couple jokes to get them to smile and show me a little bit more personality. Again, was the image for me or was it for them? These aren't images that I put in my portfolio, but it was an honor for me to be able to take these and pass them on to these people. We've got the brand new purse here. And again, you can probably see which images are for me and which are for them. I give them both. And I never really ask which ones are their favorites. I think they like both. This is how they are and how I like to photograph them in their own environments. They're domestics. Many of the domestics in Southern Africa wear uniforms. She's in her little area where she irons. And this is Gogo, who's preparing a meal. I love this image because it feels real to me. They aren't so crazy about me always photographing them when they're working, and that's okay. They still allow me to do that, and I still try to honor them by photographing them in the way they want to be photographed. But I really didn't understand that concept of how do you want to be photographed? What do you want out of an image? So how does a portrait develop? These are 3 anti-poaching guards in Namibia. Very dramatic, wouldn't you say? Well, this is how it started off. They needed a jump. A very common scene in many developing countries, and here. These young gentlemen had been stranded out in the bush, and they are trained to be able to track and do everything that they need to do without technology. They read the bush, the vegetation, the tracks, the dung. So when they're out in the bush, they have no technology, and these particular ones in Namibia are all chosen because they can handle horses. The horses take them around the game parks, the game reserves, so that there's minimal distress to the animals. They can't be seen. There's a lot of valuable wildlife on these game farms that are favorites to poachers. I was hanging out here in Namibia with Little Shop of Physics. We were able to, does anyone know Little Shop of Physics here, CSU? They have an opportunity to go to Namibia to teach. My lovely husband helps them with their video work. We went along to part of that teaching experience, and we're on a game farm for about 3 weeks. I got a little bored sitting around, so I asked a woman who got this call of distress if I could join her and see what else was out there. When we rolled up, she was pretty disappointed in these 3 young men that were sleeping out in the bush, didn't have their cables, and weren't prepared to jump their car. She, in fact, had to teach them how to do it. And it was an interesting 30 minutes to see how they were going to make this happen. After, I asked if I could take their portrait, and this is how they stood. And this is the way they were prepared for that. We got in the car, left, their car stalled again. We had to jump them again. And they said, will you take another picture? We wanted a picture with their guns. And that's when the portrait started to develop. For me, I like this one because it shows how camouflaged they are. The first one, it was a little bit more stark, a little bit more gusto, let's say, and that was my idea. And what I've found is it's about balance of what I want as a photographer or what you want as a photographer and what people want of themselves. Part of my routine of photographing people in their environments is to always do tight pictures along with the environmental shots. And I think with these, I'm starting to get to that idea of authenticity of who they are. I'm not really asking them here to smile or to do anything. I'm just putting my camera lens on them and taking their picture. These, to me, are images that I would show you all and possibly put in my portfolio. But it still wasn't entirely satisfying for me, the images that I had been collecting. I had to find a balance between authenticity and what other people want, and that's what I'm going to ask you to do when you take your next series of images. This is a series of images that I took in the same area, and for me, this represents my work, and I controlled this situation. But what I found was that I was also helping them to recognize their own beauty and pride in a different way that they had not recognized. Namibia has about 12 different tribes with all kinds of sub-tribes within it. And there's many different hairstyles, cultures, skin colors, a variety of looks and physical traits. What I wanted to try to do with this was to neutralize some of the way our clothing influences us by just having them not having any clothes from up top. They had tube tops on. And this was out in front of a tent, and so they were very willing. These women were very contemporary and were willing. And when I started to take these, they were going crazy, calling everybody over. Come, you got to get your picture taken. You got to come and take your picture taken. I let them choose the fabric that represented them best. And this is how they chose to be photographed. What I also wanted to do was to photograph the different hairstyles, which I think are fascinating in African culture. There was a woman that was sitting on the side, and they were all the ladies were encouraging her, come on, you got to do it. You'll regret it if you don't do it. You got to do it. You got to do it. And she was just sitting there, nope. Because I said, come on, you just have to put the tube top on. You'll be fine. She's like, nope. I don't know what happened, but they all went into the tent, and she came out with all of the different fabrics wrapped around her. And that's what she felt comfortable doing. I had gotten so carried away with my vision of what I wanted, I was pushing her into something that she didn't want to do. I was in a hurry. Of course, I always pick the last day of any trip to do something big, so I'm rushing. But that taught me a lesson. And then, of course, that was the thing. This is the image that I'm most attached to. This was another woman. I couldn't communicate with her by language, verbally at all. She didn't speak any English. And the other ladies were speaking to her. And she just watched, and then she went into the tent and came out. And I don't know if you can see, but she's got significant burns all across her chest. And she wasn't ashamed of that at all. But I was ashamed of myself for thinking of pushing someone into that. But she didn't care. Often what happens in Africa, in some rural areas, is that children will get burned because they're cooking over a stove with oil, and that will spill on them. The burns in in these areas on children are incredibly disturbing all the way down their body. I don't know if that's what happened to her. I don't know if this burn came because of another horrible incident. I can only guess. But what makes me proud of this is that she's proud of this. And I feel that that was part of my responsibility, is to bring that beauty to her image and to her family. My latest project is something that I've been working on where I have realized as a photographer, actually listening is more important than seeing. I'm working with an incredible woman on a documentary. Her name is Rachel Margario. I actually met her through Toastmasters, and I have my lovely Toastmasters supporters here. She's a creative, a business coach, and she happens to be completely blind. We met at a conference and met over coffee and had an immediate connection. She shared a secret with me, that she always wanted to have her own travel documentary. My eyes lit up. Travel documentary? Oh yeah, what can I do? She wants it to be collaborative. We're working together. I'm not documenting about her. We're documenting together. I found my role to be something that is multi-layered in terms of guide, photographer, friend. The first thing that she wanted to do in preparation for our hopefully big, sponsored, huge travel documentary on the Discovery Channel was to go to the Water Lantern Festival on Boyd Lake. Oh, and bear with me, I've got to skip in some slides here, so I'll do this. A lot of people wonder, why would she want to go to a water lantern festival? She can't see anything, but she can feel the energy. And we all know as photography, light has energy and it has temperature. So these opportunities were something that filled her. We went to the Water Lantern Festival and interviewed people about what their expectations were for the festival, trying to give her insight into what she was visually missing. And we got a lot of interesting responses. For me, it was an incredible experience to see how she interacted with the environment. She wants to do a YouTube channel, and she is interested in improving her visual image. What I've been able to do is find more collaborations within my community to bring them to her. This is Shayna. She's a little bit of a style guru, and she's come on board with us for the documentary. And the first thing that we started to do was to work with Rachel's fashion. You know, how does a blind person organize their closet? How do they know what to wear? What Rachel does is looks at patterns between how people talk to her and tell her how things look. Black, for example, although she can't see it, it's very draining for her and her energy. She doesn't wear it often. Pink, different shades of pink, she finds people will treat her like a little girl. What I found is happening for me is I have this innate energy or passion to explain everything that I see to her, the color, what's happening, who's in the image. But have you ever really tried to describe that shade of blue? Does it have a little gray in it? Are all greens the same? We photograph what we see, but are we able to actually describe those things? If we're able to describe what we're seeing to others, won't that make us better photographers? If we're conscious of what we're seeing around us. It's fascinating to watch Rachel, and these are just images from the first level of our gathering. But when she realizes that silks are for fancy times and wools are for winter, her face lights up because she didn't really understand those concepts. Things that we take for granted. What, for me, this is about is listening to what people are saying around you. What do they need? What do you need as a photographer? You go out, you see someone, you see an image that you want to take, but are you really listening to what the story is behind the image, behind the reason you're taking it? She's an artist. She loves to paint. And I had the opportunity to take her to Michael's the other day. She's working on a series, and she uses stencils to paint some of her things. This is freehand. And it was fascinating to me. I was grabbing stencils down, pulling them. Do you like this one? Do you like this one? And she's very detailed about what she likes in stencils and how it's going to affect her painting. She was trying to find some alphabet, some letters, and was very, very particular about the font, which, would you think that would be the case? It's highly encouraging her not to use Comic Sans. Bear with me. As a photographer, I never thought a blind person could teach me to see. What I've learned as a photographer has always been through collaboration. And how we grow as photographers is in conjunction with the people around us. Who in this room can you collaborate with? Who are you sitting next to that's going to teach you something about yourself? To be collaborative, to be truly collaborative, you need to be passionate, want to learn, and have the ability to listen. I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity to speak with you today, and I look forward to collaborating with all of you. Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, you always get me in this.
I know. That's for the next one.
Okay.
Kai, the part that I did skip over, and I'll go.
Go back or
Yeah, I do, and I also have Kai was very generous with her time and her creativity, and I run a project with another photographer called Emerging Exposures, and we teach kids photography and art. And one of the things that's developed, in my opinion, with photography is that we're no longer holding on to those secrets that we used to have. Photography now is much more collaborative. We're not fighting over the wall to find out what the secrets are. And Kai is an excellent example of that. she has developed a technique where she uses a table with plexiglass over it, and then she does a variety of things. She came down to teach these kids that I was teaching in Denver, and sprayed, the kids used paint and shaving cream, which they loved, and a ton of purple glitter. And they lie underneath these and take pictures of each other. And the idea that I also want to share that I kind of skipped over is we're all mastering our crafts. It's important that we share those and leave that legacy to others. And we encourage them to be creative. Schools are changing. The ideas of creativity are changing. And it's important, and I would like to encourage all of you with kids and grandkids to work with them, even if it's on their device, to take great pictures and to experiment and see the world a little bit differently. And I want to thank Kai for being so open to coming down. Everyone loved her. And also Dave back there came down and helped me. And we had a great time. You can see a little bit here. This is a kid underneath the table with sand and some shells. And they just love it. It really provides them with a lot of great opportunities. It's super fun.
What is that? I like that.
This is just paint.
I thought it was shaving cream and food coloring.
Oh, that might be the shaving cream and food coloring. You can do it with anything, and all you need is a piece of plexiglass. So we did and a few things. These are the little printers I spoke about earlier, and we use these to print the kids' images. And then with the plexiglass, we also have the kids paint over our faces and that kinds of thing. And I really want to encourage everyone to look around at our youth, and how we can share our creativity and our knowledge is very, very important. As photographers, we're masters of our craft, or we should be on there. Even if you're not, share what you know. It's important. And that is the part of collaboration. I did skip over Kai, so I apologize. And I'll be hitting you guys up to come down and teach with me, because I'd love to have you share your creativity. All right. Thank you. Thank you.